Hello and welcome back to the channel for your latest Guyana news updates recap. We're covering some significant developments from across the country today, Monday, May 26, 2025. So let's dive right in. Tensions with Venezuela. First, we have an update regarding tensions with Venezuela. Despite significant objections from the opposition in Caracas and growing international pressure, the Nicolas Maduro administration proceeded with elections on Sunday, including for a governor of Guyana's Essequibo. However, these elections did not take place anywhere in Guyana's territory. A fact-finding mission by journalists in bordering communities of Barimaweni, Region 1, found no election in progress, nor any evidence of campaigning or voter registration in the days leading up to Sunday. Concerns over acts of provocation remain. We heard from Maria Rivero, a 26-year-old Venezuelan national living in Matthews Ridge, who wore a jersey that read, "Essequibo is Guyana's." Rivero, who fled Venezuela due to a severe economic and social crisis, is convinced that Essequibo belongs to Guyana, despite being taught otherwise. She stated that no voting took place in her region and expressed concern that President Maduro wants to fight for the land for oil and minerals, not for the people. Gregory Vincent, a Guyanese businessman in Matthews Ridge, also affirmed that Essequibo belongs to Guyana and stated they will not give it up. In Arakaca, another community in Region 1, it was described as business as usual on Sunday. John Phillips, chairman of the Arakaca Community Development Council, confirmed that no electoral activity took place and that most Venezuelan migrants had moved on. He noted the more than 700 residents feel relatively secure and are satisfied with President Irfan Ali's assurance that the country's sovereignty and territorial integrity will remain intact. However, a former Guyana Defense Force soldier in Arakaca, Stanwyck Bowen, expressed the need for greater security presence at border communities with high influxes of Venezuelans, suggesting thorough screenings. Another resident, Sharon Williams, reported no electoral activity but felt unsafe given Venezuela's increasing acts of aggression. Along the border rivers, police patrols observed buildings and makeshift houses where migrant Warao largely reside, but no buildup of Venezuelan troops. A Venezuelan military observation post could be seen on the Venezuelan side of the Barima River, with those stationed there watching quietly. Domestic politics. Moving to domestic politics, President Irfan Ali announced during his independence address on Sunday night that general elections will take place on September 1, 2025. This date is exactly 1 month after the president celebrates his 5th year in office. The president is expected to issue a proclamation soon to dissolve the National Assembly as the country prepares for elections. The governing People's Progressive Party, PPP, welcomed the announcement. General Secretary Barrett Jagdeo stated the PPP is ready to deliver its message of continued progress. He highlighted government actions since August 2020, including responding to the global pandemic, passing an emergency budget within 40 days, and restoring essential public services. Jagdeo claimed the government has exceeded its 2020 manifesto by listening to the people and taking decisive action. The opposition, led by the People's National Congress Reform, PNCR, did not immediately respond to the election date announcement. However, they stated in their Independence Day message that the country faces mismanagement, corruption, incompetence, political domination, and oppression under the current regime. In other political news, businessman Azruddin Mohammed announced his intention to run for president in the upcoming elections. Shazam Ali, a founding member of the Citizenship Initiative, TCI, has joined the governing PPP/C and will support their re-election campaign, citing real progress over the past 5 years. International relations. On the international front, U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio congratulated Guyana on its 59th Independence Day. He reaffirmed the United States' commitment to its partnership with Guyana, based on shared democratic values and a mutual dedication to regional security and prosperity. Economic updates. Switching gears to the economy, some rice farmers in Region 6 are questioning whether to plant for the next crop due to falling international rice prices. Agriculture Minister Zulfikar Mustafa stated the government will assist by seeking sustainable ways to address the issue. The government has stepped in with subsidies to ensure farmers receive fair prices and is also providing support such as fertilizer distribution. Community tribute. Finally, we note the passing of Ms. Evadne Talbot, a beloved 112-year-old matriarch from Buxton. Just 22 days shy of her 113th birthday, she passed away on April 18th, leaving behind a legacy of warmth and service. Community members paid tribute, remembering her as a steadfast presence in their lives. That wraps up our news recap for today. We hope this update has been insightful. If you found this information helpful, please give this video a like. And for more comprehensive Guyana news updates, make sure to subscribe to the channel and hit the notification bell so you don't miss our next recap.
To really get a handle on what's shaping things today, sometimes you just need to zoom in on one place. And today, that place is Guyana. We've got a really interesting mix of recent reports here, all from News Source Guyana. They cover, well, everything from politics, the economy, even a touching tribute.
Yeah, it's quite a snapshot.
So our mission, if you like, is to pull out the key insights from all this, give you a really clear picture of what's actually happening in Guyana right now and, why it matters.
Exactly. It's like connecting the dots, isn't it? These stories give us a lens on some really critical developments, both inside Guyana and how it interacts with the world.
Okay, let's dive in then. First up, this situation with Venezuela and the Essequibo territory, it's ongoing.
Right.
So the Maduro administration, they went ahead with elections. Elections that, included appointing a governor for Essequibo, even with all the international objections.
Yeah, they pushed ahead. And this is the crucial part.
It didn't actually happen in Guyana, did it? Not at all. That's the key takeaway. The fact-finding mission in the Barima-Waini region found absolutely nothing. No campaigning, no voter registration, zilch.
So it feels more like political theater. Maybe?
That's certainly how it looks. I mean, perhaps aimed more at a domestic audience back in Venezuela than any real attempt to, exert authority inside Guyana itself. It's a statement, but not necessarily an action on the ground there.
And we heard from people living right there near the border some really powerful stories, like Maria Rivero.
Yes, her story.
Venezuelan, living in Matthews Ridge for 9 years. But she's adamant Essequibo belongs to Guyana. And she's genuinely worried about Maduro.
It's quite something, isn't it? She even mentioned being afraid of repercussions if she went back to Venezuela because of her views.
That really brings home the human side of these big geopolitical issues. It absolutely does. Her perspective, coming from Venezuela but identifying with Guyana on this issue, it just shows how complex things are on the ground, Especially in these border areas. It makes you wonder how many others might feel the same way, quietly.
Yeah. And her point about Maduro maybe being more interested in resources than people, that's a sharp observation from someone living right there.
It is. And then you have the counterpoint, almost, Gregory Vincent.
Guyanese businessman, also in Matthews Ridge.
Right. Very clear about his Guyanese heritage, absolutely rejecting any Venezuelan claim, and interestingly, mentioning that he relies on the Guyanese government for his information.
Which suggests what? A strong sense of national identity there, trust in their own government's narrative.
I think both, yeah. It shows that feeling of territorial integrity is strong among Guyanese in that region, and perhaps a resilience against, other narratives coming across the border.
Okay, so let's move slightly. Arakaca. The report there described things as business as usual.
Quiet community.
The chairman, John Phillips, said there's a small number of Venezuelan migrants, mostly in gold mining, but zero election activity, no real issues. People felt secure, apparently, because of President Ali's assurances.
Which suggests that, at least on the surface in some communities, life is carrying on without major disruption from this specific Venezuelan election move. There's a kind of localized coexistence happening.
There's always a but.
Usually is.
We also heard voices raising concerns. Stanwyck Bowen, a former GDF soldier.
Right, in Arakaca too.
He was talking about needing better border security because of undocumented immigrants, especially in places with more Venezuelans like Barrameda, Port Kaituma.
And Sharon Williams, another resident?
Yes, she expressed feeling insecure, talked about perceived Venezuelan aggression, wanting more security presence.
So you've got these contrasting feelings in the same area. Business as usual for some, but definite anxiety for others.
How do we square that?
Well, I think it just shows the reality, doesn't it? Daily life might seem normal, but the history of the dispute, Venezuela's claims, it creates this underlying tension. It's understandable. Bowen's point about security and screening migrants is a practical one, given the situation.
So, no election activity, but the tension itself, the issue, is still very much present for people.
Exactly. And that's reinforced by the final point from Mabaruma.
The police patrols on the rivers, the Iruka and Barima.
And that Venezuelan military observation post you can apparently see from the Guyanese police station.
A constant visual reminder.
Constant reminder, yeah, of the unresolved issue, the need for vigilance. It shows how, even without active fighting, it's still a militarized or at least a heavily monitored boundary.
Okay. Let's shift focus now. Inside Guyana, domestic politics. Big news here.
The election date.
Exactly. President Irfan Ali announced general elections for September 1st, 2025. That marks 5 years in office for his administration.
And the PPP General Secretary, Harat Jagdeo, was quick to respond.
Very quick. Sounded quite prepared, didn't he? He was highlighting the party's achievements since 2020. COVID response, economic recovery, investments.
He even claimed they'd exceeded their 2020 manifesto promises.
Which is quite a claim. What's the significance of announcing the date this early in Jagdeo's sort of confident tone?
Well, the early date gives everyone a clear timeline to start campaigning properly. Jagdeo's statement, that's classic pre-election positioning. Set the narrative early, focus on successes, build that public confidence.
And he laid out future plans, too, for 2025 to 2030. Jobs, healthcare, education, housing, infrastructure. Pretty comprehensive.
Very comprehensive, ticking all the boxes that voters care about, trying to show they have a clear vision for the next term, covering both the big picture and, everyday stuff like garbage collection and drainage.
And perhaps, predictably, he took aim at the opposition.
Accusing them of planning a campaign of lies, racism, and division, and unrealistic promises.
That kind of rhetoric. It's pretty standard election fare, I suppose.
Oh, absolutely. Discrediting the opposition, mobilizing your base. Accusations of racism, especially in Guyana's context, are particularly charged and often feature heavily.
And on the flip side, the PNC, the main opposition, in their Independence Day message. A very different picture.
Starkly different. They talked about mismanagement, corruption, incompetence, political domination under the PPP, vowed to defend people's rights.
So yeah, the battle lines seem clearly drawn for 2025.
Definitely looks like it's going to be a contentious campaign.
Now, throwing another factor into the mix, businessman Azruddin Mohammed. He's announced he's run for president.
Right, via a video message, promising a world-class Guyana, equality for all.
And it's worth remembering he's faced U.S. government sanctions in the past. How does his entry change things, potentially?
Well, it adds an unpredictable element, doesn't it? His business background might appeal to some voters, but those past sanctions, that's bound to be a major talking point. A big question mark for voters and maybe for international relations, too.
Speaking of international relations, we also saw that statement from the U.S. Secretary of State, Marco Rubio.
Congratulating Guyana on Independence Day.
And reaffirming the U.S. partnership, highlighting shared democratic values, regional security, but also specifically mentioning transparent governance and rule of law, especially with Guyana's economic transformation.
That message tells you a lot. The U.S.-Guyana relationship is clearly important, especially now with the oil wealth. The focus on transparency and rule of law, that's standard U.S. foreign policy. But it also signals, that the world is watching how Guyana manages this boom. They want a stable, reliable partner.
Okay, another interesting political twist. Shazam ally.
From the Citizenship Initiative, TCI, a founding member.
He's joined the governing PPPC to support their re-election campaign. He cited the progress he's seen over the last 5 years, said it was about living his values.
That's quite a move. Someone from a smaller, newer party aligning with the established PPP. It suggests, maybe a belief in the current government's direction, or perhaps, a pragmatic view of the challenges smaller parties face in Guyana.
Interesting dynamic. Okay, let's turn to the economy now, specifically rice farmers.
Right, in Region 6, concerns about falling international prices.
But the agriculture minister, Zulfikar Mustafa, he's offering assurances, saying the government will keep helping, finding better markets. He reminded them about past help, too, like the price subsidies earlier this year.
He's basically telling them, keep planting, we're working on finding better prices, new markets like the Dominican Republic, other Caribbean nations.
What are the core issues here for the rice industry? It seems quite vulnerable.
It is. Like many agricultural commodities, it's subject to global price swings. So the government's focus on new markets, diversification, and subsidies shows they recognize how vital the sector is. The long-term challenge is making Guyanese rice competitive, maybe looking at more value-added products, too.
And it's not just the minister. The Rice Producers Association president, Lika Rambridge, was advising farmers on managing investments, finding lower interest rates.
And Minister Mustafa also mentioned specific help for Essequibo Coast farmers, like waiving ferry costs for transporting paddy and rice.
So it sounds like a multi-level effort. Government, industry bodies, targeted regional support.
Yeah, trying to tackle the immediate pressure while also thinking about longer-term sustainability for this really important industry. They also mentioned upcoming fertilizer distribution, support from the Rice Development Board. It's a package of measures.
Okay, and finally, before we wrap up, we need to acknowledge a different kind of story. The passing of Evadne Talbot.
Ah, yes. The 112-year-old matriarch from Buxton.
An incredible age. Remembered as a real pillar of her community. Her great-grandson, the journalist Gerald Bryan, shared some lovely memories. Called her the glue of the family, the last of an era.
It's important to have these stories, too, isn't it? Alongside the politics and economics, it reminds you of the social fabric, the individuals who shape communities over decades.
Absolutely. Her healthy lifestyle, her community involvement, it paints a picture of a long life, well-lived and deeply connected to her home. A reminder that national identity is built on these individual lives and contributions, too.
A really poignant tribute, and apparently she was thought to be the oldest living Guyanese at the time.
So as we wrap up this deep dive, it feels like we've touched on a lot of interconnected themes, doesn't it?
Definitely. The political scene heating up with the election announcement and a new candidate, the ongoing border concerns with Venezuela, even if the elections didn't spill over.
The economic support for a key sector like rice farming. And then pausing to remember someone like Mrs. Talbot.
Yeah, all these different threads, international relations, national politics, local community life, economic pressures, they all weave together to show you the complex reality of Guyana today.
So the final thought for you, listening. How do all these different pieces fit together in your mind? The border tensions, the election race, the farmers' concerns, the life of a community elder. How do you see them shaping Guyana's path forward?
What questions does it raise for you about where the nation is heading? Definitely some food for thought there.